It is truth, universally acknowledged, that Jane Austen has written some of the most notable romances in the English language. And it is for that reason, among others, we are celebrating the month of February and Valentine's Day by honoring Miss Austen and all the hearts that she has spoiled with her romantic endeavors throughout the centuries. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and this month we are finally indicting myself. My name is Victoria, and this month we are finally crowning myself a member of the Jane Austen fan club. If you happen to check out my goals video for 2024, I think over here it will be, that I had a goal of reading all of Miss Austen's novels before heading out to my very own Jane Austen experience in Vermont in the month of October. So when I was planning content here for the month of February, seeing all of the wonderful booktubers preparing their different romances to celebrate the month of Hallmark love, I thought to myself, wouldn't it be amazing to deep dive into the Austenverse in the month of February? Really celebrate the queen, nay, the godmother, nay, the creator of the Regency romance. And that, my friends, is precisely what we are doing this month. In lieu of a traditional TBR, we are going to be mapping out how I am going to spend my next 29 days. Yes, that is right. Happy leap year, y'all. Reading and watching all things Austen. First, I am sorry to admit that I have never completed a Jane Austen novel. I know, but this year we are changing that blemish on my reading record. So let's talk a little bit more about Miss Austen and her pervasiveness in our culture and the way that I'm going to try to read all of her novels here in the month of February. So before we get into this, I must tell you all that I haven't used this delightful teacup in so long that when I first took it out, it was just kind of setting up the space. There was so much dust, and now I think there's dust in my eyelashes. But let's talk a little bit more about Miss Austen. If you aren't familiar, Jane Austen only actually published 6 completed novels in her lifetime. And I say 6 completed novels in her lifetime with a bit of an asterisk. So according to janeausten.org, Miss Austen actually only published 4 of her completed works while she was alive, and then 2 were published posthumously, which means after she passed away, by her brother Henry and her sister Cassandra. So the 4 books that were actually published while Miss Austen was alive were Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Mansfield Park, and Sense and Sensibility. Persuasion and Northanger Abbey were both published posthumously. Jane Austen also had an unfinished work, Sanditon, which might sound familiar because PBS Masterpiece actually created a 3-part series. I say a 3-part series. They had a series with 3 seasons where they took that work and completed it. They took the work and completed it using a lot of through lines from Miss Austen's other works, but we'll talk about that in another video. So if you didn't know, Jane Austen actually passed away in her early 40s. I believe according to their website she passed away on July 18th, 1817, and she was 41. So I was reading something, and I'll have to find the reference, that Jane Austen was believed to have Addison's disease and was feeling ill for a good portion of her adult life. That leaves us with, for our TBR, for our plans here, that we are going to be reading the 7 novels by Jane Austen. So again, those are going to be 6 completed ones. So Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Persuasion, Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park, and Northanger Abbey, and then also reading Sanditon. In addition to that, I did pick up Lady Susan, the Watsons, and Sanditon. So Lady Susan is an unfinished novella. She does have some other novellas according to janeausten.org. So they list in her first volume of novellas, Jack and Alice, Henry and Eliza. In the second volume is Love and Friendship and the History of England. And the third volume is Catherine or the Boer and Evelyn. I do not know if I will get to these short stories. So I do have from Libby, they have this audiobook for Jane Austen, which includes Lady Susan, the Watsons, and Sanditon. So I'm going to include those uncompleted works in my read here. As you'll see, I've had a hold on it. It should be here soon, but I believe the listening time for this is only like 3 hours. So I feel like it's very easy to go ahead and work this in. 2-hour reading plans for February. So let's talk about the 6 completed works that we are going to be reading for the month of February. So spoiler alert, I actually finished one of them before filming this video, and that is Pride and Prejudice. So we are just going to read the little synopsis from our good friends over at Wikipedia. Pride and Prejudice is the second novel by English author Jane Austen, published in 1813. A novel of manners, it follows the character development of Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist of the book, who learns about the repercussions of hasty judgments and comes to appreciate the difference between superficial goodness and actual goodness. I think that's a pretty good summation of the book, but we are going to be reading Sense and Sensibility next. And so Sense and Sensibility, which I know a lot less about than I do Pride and Prejudice, even though there are quite a few adaptations of it. So Sense and Sensibility is the first novel by Jane Austen. It was published in 1811. It was published anonymously, which just said like by a lady, appears in the title where the author's name might have been. It tells the story of the Dashwood sisters, Eleanor and Marianne, as they come to age. They have an older half-brother John and a younger sister Margaret as well. The novel follows the 3 Dashwood sisters and their widowed mother as they are forced to leave the family estate at Northland Park and move to Barton Cottage, a modest home on the property of a distant relative, Sir John Middleton. There, Eleanor and Marianne experience love, romance, and heartbreak. The novel is set in southwest England, London, and Sussex, probably between 1792 and 1797. Then, going on with that, we're going to be reading Mansfield Park. So Mansfield Park is the third published novel, first published in 1814 by Thomas Egerton. I don't know why that needs to be included. It was a second edition, was published by John Murray in 1816, still within Austen's lifetime, but the novel did not receive any public reviews until 1821. Some fun facts. Thank you, Wikipedia. Thank you very much. So the novel tells the story of Fanny Price, starting when her overburdened family sends her at an age of 10 to live in the household of her wealthy aunt and uncle, following her development into early adulthood. The next book in order of publication, again, I guess I should have looked at the order of publication before I started with Pride and Prejudice, but who are we to judge, huh? Who are we? Emma is the 4th novel written by Jane Austen. Again, this would be the last one that was published while she was still alive. It is set in the fictional country village of Highbury and the surrounding estates of Hartfield, Randalls, and Donwell Abbey, and involves the relationships among people from a small number of families. The novel was first published in December 1815, although the title page is dated 1816. So according to Wikipedia, it also says, before she began the novel, Austen wrote, "I'm going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like." In the first sentence, she introduces the title character as Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and a happy disposition. Have lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vexed her. Emma is spoiled, headstrong, and self-satisfied. She greatly overestimates her own matchmaking abilities. She is blind to the dangers of meddling in other people's lives, and her imaginations and perceptions often lead her astray. The next 2 novels we'll be talking about are the ones that were published after Jane Austen's death. That is Persuasion and Northanger Abbey, and these were actually both published together. So Persuasion was actually the last novel completed by Jane Austen. It was published on December 20th in 1817 along with Northanger Abbey, and it was published 6 months after her death, although the title page is 1818. The story concerns Anne Elliot, an Englishwoman of 27 years whose family moves to lower their expenses and reduce their debt by renting their home to an admiral and his wife. The wife's brother, Captain Frederick Wentworth, was engaged to Anne in 1806, but the engagement was broken when Anne was persuaded by her family and friends to end the relationship. Anne and Captain Wentworth, both single and unattached, meet again after a separation of almost 8 years, setting the scene for a second well-considered chance at love and marriage. So, as I mentioned, Northanger Abbey was published at the same time as Persuasion, although it was a novel that was written before Persuasion. So Northanger Abbey is a coming-of-age novel and a satire of Gothic novels. Completed in 1803, the first of Austen's novels completed in full, but was published posthumously in 1817 with Persuasion. The story concerns Catherine Morland, the naive young protagonist, and her journey to a better understanding of herself and the world around her. How Catherine views the world has been distorted by her fondness for Gothic novels and an active imagination. And then the last one that we will review is Sanditon. So again, Sanditon is the unfinished novel by Jane Austen. In January of 1817, Austen began work on a new novel she called The Brothers, later titled Sanditon, and completed 11 chapters before starting work in mid-March of 1817. So the novel centers around Charlotte Haywood, the eldest of the daughters still at home in a large family of a country gentleman from Willingdon, Sussex. The narrative opens when the carriage of Mr. and Mrs. Parker of Sanditon toppled over a hill near Haywood home. Because Mr. Parker is injured in the crash and the carriage needs repairs, the Parkers stay with the Haywood family for a fortnight. During this time, Mr. Parker talks fondly of Sanditon, a town which until a few years ago had been a small, unpretentious fishing village. With his business partner, Lady Denham, Mr. Parker hopes to make Sanditon into a fashionable seaside resort. Mr. Parker's enormous enthusiasm for his plans to improve and modernize Sanditon has resulted in the installation of bathing machines and the construction of a new home for himself and his family near the seashore. Upon repair of the carriage and improvement to Mr. Parker's foot, the Parkers return to Sanditon, bringing Charlotte with them as their summer guest. If you've seen the show, you'll know where it goes from there. So those are the 6 works that we're going to be reading from Miss Austen. Now, let's talk about some of the other plans that I have for this month. I am also going to endeavor to do some reading of some of the adaptations of Mrs. Austen's works. I have read a few before, which is sad to say that I've read adaptations before reading the real ones, but that's where we're at. So we are going to attempt to read some. I've picked up a huge stack. Let me just show you. We've got quite an assortment. I literally just went to my library and grabbed as many books that were in some semblance related to Jane Austen as I could. So I have those adaptations there. I want to do a reading vlog with ones that I haven't read, and then I do want to do a ranking of my favorite Jane Austen adaptations. So as I've mentioned, I've read quite a few Jane Austen adjacent or Jane Austen adaptations in my time. So I'm gonna go through the ones that I get to read here and then the ones that I have previously read and go ahead and do a ranking of my favorite versions of Jane Austen adaptations. Speaking of adaptations, we're also going to attempt to do some rankings of Jane Austen adaptations when it comes to television and film. There are so many out there, so many miniseries, movies, just galore, and I have watched quite a few of them, to be honest. I was going through the list online and I was shocked by how many of these shows I have watched. So I do want to do a ranking of those, you know, give you my favorite recommendations for each one of the books and just talk a little bit more about each of them and what I think they did well and what I liked more maybe from the movie than I did the book or different things like that. So if you have any adaptations that you absolutely love, whether they are books or movies or TV shows, please feel free to drop them in the comments because I am looking for some that I haven't watched. And then on top of that, I thought it would be fun to maybe go and do some fun Regency inspired things. I mean, granted, I've already gone to high tea recently, but maybe I'll go do a high tea. I thought it'd be fun to try to make some Regency style outfits with what I have in my closet or see if I can thrift some things. So I thought that could be really fun to do. And I also have some teas and coffees that I got from chapters tea, which Jenny of the story Ain't Over turned me on to. So I'm still waiting for those. I think I have, I don't know, they should be here soon. So I picked up the Pride and Prejudice medium roast coffee and also Picnic at Pemberley, which is a Pride and Prejudice tea. So we got some themed coffees and teas to go with this month. I'm just really excited. I think this is gonna be a lot of fun. If you have any recommendations for things for me to do, or you'd like to see, or adaptations you'd like me to read or watch, please feel free to drop those in the comments below. I am looking for some more, maybe not some more adaptations of books, because I have like 12 or 13 here, but if you have any of the TV or movie adaptations that you really think I should watch, maybe some that aren't as popular, I would love to hear that in the comments. With that, your girl's got some reading to do. We have some watching to do. We're going to swoon over some Regency men together this month, and I cannot wait. So thank you so much for watching. If you want to stick around to join me in some Regency romance fun here in the month of February, or other bookish and nerdist content, feel free to subscribe. I upload every Sunday and sometimes on Wednesdays. And until then, I hope you read a good book, find some joy, and do something good in the world. And I'll see you in my next one.